Have you ever wondered why being the nice guy so often leaves you feeling invisible, overlooked, or even rejected? You give your best, you treat her with respect, you show care, yet somehow she chooses the one who doesn't try nearly as hard. It feels unfair, doesn't it? You start to question yourself. Maybe kindness isn't worth it. Maybe being good-hearted is a weakness. But the truth is, she never hated your kindness. She was drawn to it. What she pulled away from wasn't your heart. It was the energy behind it. Women don't hate nice men. They hate weakness disguised as niceness. They can sense when your smile hides fear, when your compliments are born from need, when your patience is fueled by desperation. They can feel when your kindness isn't confidence. It's a silent plea to be chosen. And that's what breaks attraction, because deep down, what every woman is wired to feel toward a man is trust. Trust that he stands firm in who he is. Trust that his kindness comes from choice, not from fear of losing her. The nice guy most men become is not truly nice. He's agreeable, he's afraid to say no, he puts others first, not out of love, but because he's terrified of conflict, terrified of rejection, terrified of being seen as less. And so he bends, apologizes too much, gives too fast, forgives too easily, not because he's a saint, but because he doesn't believe he's enough. And that energy, that quiet insecurity radiates louder than words. You see, a woman doesn't fall for what a man says. She falls for what she feels around him. If she feels his calm strength, his self-respect, his unshakable direction, her instincts open. But if she feels his uncertainty, his hesitation, his dependence on her approval, she pulls back. Not because she wants to hurt him, but because something inside her cannot trust a man who cannot trust himself. So it's not your kindness that needs to die. It's your weakness that needs to be buried. The world doesn't need more cold, distant men. It needs strong, centered ones. Men who can love deeply without losing themselves. Men who can give without expecting a reward. Men who can stand alone if they must and still move with grace. That's what makes you magnetic. That's what makes your presence unforgettable. When you understand this truth, everything changes. You stop chasing attention. You stop begging for love. You stop confusing being nice with being worthy. And in that shift, women start responding differently. You become someone they can respect, someone they can trust, someone they can lean on without feeling they have to lead. So stay with this message, because what you're about to discover is not how to play a game or wear a mask. It's how to awaken the strength you already have inside you, the power that makes you kind but never weak. By the end of this journey, you'll see that women don't hate nice men at all. They crave them when their niceness is backed by the quiet power of a man who knows who he is. Most men mistake weakness for kindness because they've been taught that being good means never upsetting anyone. They believe love must be earned through constant giving, through bending, through never saying no. But the truth is, when your kindness is built on fear, it stops being kindness at all. It becomes manipulation. You don't give because you want to. You give because you're terrified of what will happen if you don't. That energy may look gentle on the surface, but underneath it, it screams insecurity. And that insecurity repels the very connection you crave. When you seek validation, you lose respect. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, you chip away at your own self-worth. Every time you overextend yourself to prove your value, you silently tell her you don't believe you already have it. Women can sense this instantly. They may not be able to explain it, but they feel it, that subtle imbalance, that quiet desperation hiding behind your politeness. And nothing kills attraction faster than a man who gives away his power in exchange for approval. Psychology calls it the reciprocity trap. You give because you expect something back, affection, attention, commitment, but real confidence never gives to get. It gives because it overflows, because it doesn't fear loss, because it knows that love is a gift, not a negotiation. When you give from emptiness, you drain yourself. When you give from strength, you create connection. Women feel the difference immediately. Weak men use kindness as currency. Strong men use it as character. That's why the same action, a compliment, a gesture, a sacrifice, can either attract or repel depending on the energy behind it. When you're kind from a place of power, it feels safe. When you're kind from a place of fear, it feels heavy. And the more you try to please, the less you're respected, because people can feel when your kindness has strings attached. Real niceness doesn't mean shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. It means standing in your truth without losing your softness. It means knowing when to walk away without bitterness, when to speak up without hostility, when to care deeply without becoming dependent. It's strength wrapped in grace, and that balance is what every truly confident man learns to master. You must understand that weakness isn't a lack of physical dominance. It's a lack of boundaries. It's the inability to say, I deserve more. It's apologizing for your standards. It's hiding your opinions because you fear they might offend. And every time you do that, you teach the world how to treat you. You become the man who settles, the man who waits for permission, the man who mistakes tolerance for love. But love doesn't grow in fear. It grows in the presence of truth. So stop performing for approval. Stop bending yourself to be accepted. The more you chase acceptance, the further you drift from authenticity. The more you abandon yourself to please others, the less you'll ever be truly seen. Because respect isn't given to those who hide their truth. It's earned by those who stand in it. When you finally stop giving from fear, something incredible happens. Your energy changes. Your eyes carry calm instead of desperation. Your words feel grounded instead of forced. You become someone who doesn't need to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. And that, more than anything else, is what makes you impossible to forget. Strength isn't about how loud you speak, how hard you look, or how many people you can intimidate. Real strength is measured by how deeply you can stay centered when life tries to shake you. It's in your ability to control your emotions instead of being controlled by them. Because a man who can't control his emotions is a man who's lost control of himself. And when you lose that control, you lose the quiet power that makes people feel safe around you. Emotional control is the foundation of attraction, leadership, and respect. It doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop reacting. You stop letting every rejection, every delay, every insult dictate how you show up in the world. When a man is calm under pressure, when his energy stays grounded no matter the chaos, it sends a message louder than any words could: I am unshakable. And that, more than appearance, more than charm, is what draws people in. Women are not drawn to emotionless men. They're drawn to men whose emotions serve them, not sabotage them. Every man has moments when anger flares, when fear whispers, when pride wants to fight back. But emotional mastery isn't about suppression. It's about awareness. You feel everything fully, but you don't let those feelings dictate your behavior. You choose your response every time. That's what separates strength from instability, because the moment you lose control, you give your power away, and the world will always test your power to see if it's real. When you stay calm in conflict, you signal confidence. When you listen instead of react, you display presence. When you choose peace over ego, you reveal maturity, and that maturity is magnetic because it communicates safety. Women don't follow chaos, they follow stability. They're drawn to men whose inner world is strong enough to hold space for others. A man who can carry his emotions with grace becomes a man who can carry life with purpose. Most men chase external validation to prove strength, money, looks, status, yet they crumble when life doesn't go their way. That's not strength, that's performance. Real power isn't built in the spotlight, it's forged in silence. It's born in the moments when you want to lash out but choose restraint, when you want to give up but stay consistent, when you want to prove something but stay humble. Those moments shape the man that no one can shake. You become powerful the day you stop reacting to everything. Because in that stillness, your mind clears, your energy aligns, and your decisions start coming from truth, not emotion. You stop being controlled by fear or validation, and you start leading yourself. That leadership radiates outward in your posture, your words, your presence. People feel it without you saying a thing. So don't chase being unbothered, chase being grounded. Learn to breathe through your storms. Learn to speak calmly when others shout. Learn to let silence do the talking when anger tries to control the room. That's real dominance. That's what separates a man who needs power from a man who is power. When you master your emotions, you master your life. Because the world can take everything from you, money, love, reputation, but it can't take your inner state unless you hand it over. And the man who holds that kind of peace doesn't need to chase respect. Respect naturally finds him. Certainty is the rarest energy in the world. It's the quiet power that makes people stop and listen without you having to demand attention. It's the calm in your eyes that tells the world you know who you are and where you're going. When you carry certainty, everything about you changes. The way you walk, the way you speak, the way you hold space in a room. You stop chasing and you start attracting. Because certainty is magnetic. It's the signal of self-trust, and that's what every woman instinctively responds to. Certainty doesn't mean arrogance. Arrogance is loud because it's insecure. Certainty is silent because it's real. It's not about proving your worth. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you no longer seek permission to express it. You're no longer waiting for approval to feel valid. You no longer crumble when someone questions your value. You know that validation from others will never fill the emptiness that self-doubt creates. Only certainty can do that. Every man who rises from weakness to strength learns that life constantly tests his certainty. People will challenge your decisions, doubt your vision, mock your patience, and try to shake your confidence. Not because they're evil, but because they want to see if your conviction is genuine. Even women test it. They question your words, push your boundaries, observe your reactions, not to destroy your confidence, but to feel the depth of it. Because if your certainty disappears under pressure, it was never real. Psychology calls this emotional congruence, when your words, energy, and actions align perfectly. When what you say feels true because you believe it completely. That's what creates trust. You can't fake it. You can't rehearse it, and you can't imitate it. It only comes when you've done the inner work, when you've faced failure, faced rejection, faced your own fears, and refused to fold. That process builds a kind of groundedness that can't be shaken. And when a woman feels that, she relaxes. She feels safe in your presence because your certainty gives her permission to let her guard down. Certainty is the opposite of neediness. Neediness screams, I don't trust myself to be enough. Certainty whispers, I am enough. Regardless of the outcome. One energy repels, the other attracts. When you stop seeking to be chosen, you start embodying the kind of presence that naturally gets chosen, not because you beg for attention, but because your energy commands it. That's the power of being anchored in your truth. You don't need to prove that you're good enough for anyone. You need to become so certain in your value that you only align with what respects it. Every time you say no to something that insults your standards, your certainty strengthens. Every time you walk away from validation and choose self-respect, your energy deepens. The man who trusts himself doesn't have to chase outcomes. He simply moves forward knowing that whatever happens, he can handle it. The world bends for the man who refuses to doubt his path, because certainty is leadership. It's the energy that calms chaos, the presence that makes others believe things will be okay. When you carry that, you don't compete, you create. You don't beg, you inspire. You don't force, you attract. And that's when you finally realize confidence isn't about being perfect. It's about being unshakably certain in your imperfection. True power isn't found in domination or control. It's found in balance, the harmony between strength and compassion, between firmness and understanding. A man who knows how to be powerful yet gentle holds a rare kind of influence. He doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard. He doesn't need to force outcomes to be respected. His calm confidence commands attention, and his quiet empathy builds trust. That balance is what creates lasting connection. Because real strength doesn't crush, it protects. And real kindness doesn't weaken, it empowers. When a man leans too far into power without compassion, he becomes cold, detached, and feared. When he leans too far into compassion without power, he becomes passive, overlooked, and used. Both extremes destroy balance. One builds walls, the other erases boundaries. But when power and compassion move together, they create gravity. You become the kind of man who can stand his ground while keeping his heart open, a man who can say no with grace and lead without ego. That balance is what women are instinctively drawn to because it reflects safety. It says, I can protect you, but I will never control you. The psychology behind attraction proves this. Safety and excitement are both essential for connection to thrive. A woman wants to feel safe in your presence but not bored. She wants to feel seen but not smothered. She wants to trust your leadership but also feel your empathy. That's what makes emotional polarity so powerful. It's not about dominance or submission. It's about dynamic balance. When your energy is both strong and kind, it allows her to relax into her natural essence. You don't have to prove your strength or hide your heart. Both coexist in harmony. This kind of balance can't be faked. It comes from inner wholeness, from knowing who you are and standing in it without apology. Weakness gives to get. Power gives because it can. Weakness needs validation. Power needs purpose. Weakness fears rejection. Power embraces truth. When your intentions are pure, your energy becomes clear. You're no longer operating from fear or insecurity, but from integrity. And integrity, more than anything, is what makes your presence unforgettable. A man who carries both power and compassion radiates calm certainty. His boundaries are clear, but his energy is warm. He's not trying to impress anyone. He's simply aligned with his values. People trust him because he trusts himself. Women respect him because he respects his own standards. He doesn't need to be loud to be seen. His consistency speaks louder than any words could. And because he's not afraid to show emotion, his strength feels human, not mechanical, not performative, but deeply real. This is what it means to evolve from being nice to being noble. Niceness bends for acceptance. Nobility stands for truth. Niceness avoids confrontation. Nobility faces it with calm authority. Niceness pleases out of fear. Nobility serves out of choice. And when you rise into that nobility, your energy shifts. You stop chasing validation and start radiating value. You become a man who can inspire trust, awaken admiration, and command desire, not by force but by presence. Because the world doesn't need more hard men pretending to be strong or soft men pretending to be kind. It needs grounded men who embody both. Men who can lead with conviction and love with depth. That's the kind of power that transforms relationships, earns respect, and leaves a legacy that no one can forget. Integrity is the foundation of true masculinity. It's the invisible force that builds your confidence, fuels your discipline, and defines your worth. Without integrity, strength becomes manipulation and charm becomes deception. But when a man lives in alignment with what he believes, everything he touches gains substance. He no longer has to convince anyone of who he is. His actions speak for him. Integrity gives your presence weight. It's the reason people listen when you speak, trust your word, and feel safe in your energy. Integrity means doing what's right even when no one's watching, even when it costs you comfort, even when walking away hurts. It's holding yourself accountable to your own standards instead of chasing approval. Because the truth is, a man who breaks his own word to please others ends up living a life built on cracks. You can't build respect on compromise. You can't lead when you betray yourself. The moment you start abandoning your principles to keep someone's affection, you trade self-respect for temporary attention, and that's a deal that always leaves you empty. Every man reaches a point where he must choose between comfort and character. Weak men choose comfort. Strong men choose growth. Integrity is the bridge between the two. It's what keeps you grounded when everything around you tempts you to bend. It's what makes you say, I'd rather be alone in truth than surrounded by lies. That decision separates those who merely exist from those who lead. Because integrity isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent. It's about showing up the same way whether people are watching or not. Women can feel integrity in a man before he says a word. It's in his posture, in his tone, the way he honors his boundaries. She senses when a man means what he says, when his energy matches his intentions. That consistency creates trust, not the kind built overnight, but the kind that feels safe over time. And that's what makes a man unforgettable. His presence isn't a performance. It's an embodiment of principle. Discipline and integrity walk hand in hand. Discipline is integrity in motion. Doing what you said you would, long after the feeling is gone. When you wake up early, when you keep your word, when you stay true to your path, even when no one claps, you're teaching your mind to trust you. That self-trust builds momentum, and that momentum becomes confidence. Confidence that doesn't need noise, doesn't need validation, doesn't need applause, because it's built on truth. Integrity also means being honest with yourself. It means admitting when you're wrong, when you've been lazy, when you've allowed fear to make your decisions. Weakness hides behind excuses. Strength faces them head on. Every time you confront your own reflection with honesty, you rise higher. Because growth doesn't come from pretending. It comes from taking responsibility. And when you start living that way, your energy shifts from seeking to creating, from reacting to leading. The world respects men who are rooted in principle. because in a time when so many change their colors to fit the crowd, a man of integrity stands out effortlessly. He becomes rare. He becomes trusted. He becomes magnetic. You can feel his power not because he's trying to impress anyone, but because he carries himself with quiet certainty. That's the essence of masculine integrity, doing what's right, standing firm in your truth and walking with the kind of strength that can't be shaken. The man who learns to balance strength, compassion, and integrity becomes something rare, a presence that both commands and comforts. He doesn't chase validation because he's already anchored in self-worth. He doesn't need to prove that he's good enough because he lives like he knows he is. That certainty radiates through every word, every silence, every choice. It's not about ego, it's about alignment. When a man lives aligned with his truth, his energy becomes magnetic. He draws respect without asking for it, admiration without effort, and love without chasing it. Women don't hate nice men. They hate the kind of niceness that hides weakness. But when a man's kindness comes from strength, it becomes irresistible. Because kindness backed by power is protection, not submission. It says, I can care for you without losing myself. That's the energy that inspires both desire and respect, the rare balance between gentleness and authority. It's the essence of masculine maturity. A man who embodies it doesn't play games, doesn't beg for attention, doesn't crumble when rejected. He moves with quiet certainty, knowing that what's meant for him will always recognize him. Every woman longs to feel the presence of a man who is deeply kind yet unbreakably strong. Someone whose emotions run deep but never drown him. Someone who listens without losing himself, gives without being drained, loves without fear. That kind of man is unforgettable because his energy is steady. It doesn't shift with moods or circumstances. He doesn't become cold when things don't go his way, and he doesn't overextend himself to earn affection. His love is a choice, not a transaction, and that's what makes him stand out in a world full of performers. When you become that man, your relationships transform. People treat you differently because your energy no longer carries desperation. You stop attracting those who feed on weakness and start attracting those who value strength. Women respond to you differently, not because you've learned tricks or tactics, but because you've become emotionally trustworthy. Your calmness feels safe, your boundaries feel firm, and your kindness feels sincere. That's the energy that creates respect before attraction, peace before passion, and trust before commitment. This transformation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before fear made you small, before you started bending for approval, before you forgot that your value was never meant to be negotiated. The strength you're searching for is already inside you. It's just buried beneath layers of doubt and habit. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You only need to start living as if you already are enough, because you are. The man who reaches this level doesn't chase love. He creates it, not through control, but through presence. Not through manipulation, but through truth. He understands that being masculine isn't about being hard, it's about being grounded. It's about standing tall in your values and soft in your heart. When your strength protects and your kindness inspires, you become the kind of man who doesn't just attract love, you sustain it. So rise into that power. Stop apologizing for your standards. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Stop calling your weakness kindness when it's really fear. You were not born to be tolerated. You were born to be respected, to be trusted, to be remembered. Women don't hate nice men. They hate weakness. But when your niceness is rooted in strength, they can't help but love you for it, deeply, endlessly, and without hesitation. Becoming the kind of man who inspires respect and desire begins the moment you stop chasing and start becoming. It's the moment you decide that your worth no longer depends on who approves of you, but on how deeply you stand in your truth. Every man reaches a point where he realizes that power isn't found in controlling others. It's found in mastering himself. When your emotions no longer own you, when your need for validation fades, when you can stand alone and still feel complete, you become magnetic. You become the calm in the storm, the force that others can feel without understanding why. The world is full of men trying to be noticed, but very few who are unforgettable. The difference isn't in their looks or their words, it's in their energy. Unforgettable men have presence. They don't seek attention, they command it. They don't rush to fill silence, they make silence feel powerful. Their eyes speak confidence. Their posture radiates certainty. Their boundaries speak louder than their promises. And that presence doesn't come from pretending to be fearless, it comes from facing fear and walking through it anyway. A man who has faced himself, his insecurities, his failures, his emotional pain, carries a kind of depth that can't be faked. You can feel it in his tone, in his patience, in his quiet confidence. He doesn't need to prove that he's strong. His restraint proves it for him. He doesn't need to convince anyone that he's worthy. His consistency shows it over time. That's what makes a man powerful. That's what makes him impossible to ignore. Women don't crave perfection. They crave presence. They crave the energy of a man who is fully grounded, fully real, fully present in who he is. A man who can look at her without losing himself, who can love her without needing to be saved by her. That kind of energy awakens something primal, not because it's dominant, but because it's safe. Safety is the foundation of true attraction. When a woman feels that your strength isn't a performance, but an inner truth, she trusts you not just with her body, but with her heart. To become that man, you must stop running from discomfort. You must stop avoiding solitude. Solitude isn't loneliness. It's where you meet yourself without distraction. It's where you learn your true thoughts, your true values, your true vision. When you stop seeking constant noise, you begin to hear your own voice clearly. That's when your direction solidifies. That's when your certainty grows. Because confidence isn't built through praise, it's built through silence, through discipline, through commitment to your purpose when no one's watching. The man who knows himself doesn't chase, he attracts, not through tactics or games, but through energy. His words carry weight because they come from truth. His actions inspire because they come from conviction. His presence is felt long after he leaves the room because he stands for something. That's the kind of man the world remembers. That's the kind of man women respect. When you reach that point, love no longer becomes a pursuit. It becomes a reflection. The respect you seek from others begins to mirror the respect you've built for yourself. And that's when life changes. Because a man who truly knows who he is no longer fights for attention. He becomes attention. He doesn't beg to be loved. He becomes love in motion. Strength and kindness fused into one, moving through the world with grace, power, and purpose.